was fighting with the umbrella more than dealing with the rain. So. Thanks for being here. This is our October, is that October already? Our October parent plug-in. Remember that the topics were selected actually by last year's parents that attended these, so if you don't like this, blame them. But we'll certainly solicit feedback from you guys as we go through this so you can tell us like more that you want to hear about what happens here. I want to give you some quick updates. Today we're talking about curriculum, but some things that are happening. We are the back-to-back softball champions for the district, which is so much fun. Our head coach and athletic director, Ms. Noelle Ingram, is right over here. I think she would tell you that we were very fortunate to have a lot of people come out and support this work, other coaches, a lot of parents. It really was a community endeavor. Where the girls started and where they ended up was pretty fantastic to see that grow throughout the season. So it was really nice. We had a fantastic cross-country season. One of our girl students finished in the top 10 for the entire district, did really well. And our boys made it to sectionals. We're not advancing in cross-country, but still just a really great season to see them out there. If you haven't been to a cross-country event, there's a lot happening. So it was really great to see them advance as far as they did. Volleyball season's already started with practices. First game is Monday. Thanks, Coach. Got it. We just got back from fall break. We are surveying parents whose children participated in intercession for the remediation. We're also just going to be soliciting our families overall to see sort of how it went with fall break, what it was like to transition back, and of course we're asking our staff the same. And then report cards out, yes?
Yeah, they're available online.
They're live pretty much all the time. So sending home report cards is kind of a thing of the past. When we do it, we have to report. There's state law that says like at certain intervals we'll do that. But the report card itself is pretty much live all the time. Parlay is doing a dress down of non-perishable food item on October the 13th. We're going to be representing at the farmers market on Tybee on the 16th. We're having our high school fair, so for our 8th grade parents and 7th grade parents for the last 30 minutes, it's a chance for you to come in. It's a big event where all the high schools in this region come in and present and basically let our students know that they're wanted and what their programs look like.
17 high schools coming.
17 high schools.
Now, are those the private schools or public schools? Or?
Yes, all the above. It's everybody. I want a good opportunity for kids. I don't care what it looks like.
Is that something they do at every middle school, or
Nope.
is this by invitation? So our schools, y'all offer that? Okay.
Yeah, STEM used to do it. I don't know if they still do, but we do. Yeah. Our students actually, so our school counselor goes into the middle grades classrooms and talks to the kids and prepares them for the right questions to ask. The feedback that we got last year from the high schools was overwhelming. They loved meeting our kids. They loved coming out, talking to parents, having the kids engage with them and ask them questions. Like, tell me about your school and how what you say you care about is infused in the curriculum every day. Like, one principal was like, these were hard questions. We're like, well, these are great kids. So, dress down day for $1. That benefits Hunter Army Airfield and their families. Yeah, I think they're actually getting ready for a big trick-or-treating event, and so this is supporting that. And then the last day to order pictures is also the same day, October 20th, and that access is available online. If for whatever reason you don't have that information, we can get that for you. But I know it went out in the newsletter. I think we even did a social media post for it. All right, and so a soft launch of our Maritime Fund happened at our 10th anniversary event. For those of you that were able to attend that, thank you so much. We got a lot of really positive press that day. We got a lot of great parent participation, community members, folks just really coming in and celebrating with us. This is our 10th year. We're doing a lot of connections in the community, talking about how we still kind of operate as a startup, which keeps us scrappy And that's what everybody kind of talked like, oh, you guys just figure it out. We're like, well, yeah, that's fantastic. Like, we love it. But a business that's been in business for 10 years successfully probably doesn't need to operate that way all the time, which is why you're hearing a lot more about us leaning into getting a building and like those kinds of things, right? Because it's great initially to have everybody do those things. It's not so great in the 10th year to have your secretary still plunging toilets, right? So we're pivoting to a lot of conversations that are more about organizational structure and what our business needs to do, because at the heart of it, schools are still businesses. But one of those things is leading into our Maritime Fund. We had a lot of success last year with launching this. So our soft launch was last week. We're delineating this year from a parent side and a community member side. One, I try to talk a lot about how it frustrates me as a dad, but also as an administrator, how schools tend to nickel and dime parents to death. We really try to be mindful of that. I know it might not always feel that way, but I promise, like, we really try to be thoughtful when we ask parents for money, whether it's for a field trip or for something that's happening. I'm mindful that for many of you, you have more than one kid, and even if not, it's still maybe an unanticipated burden or an expense, and so I really don't like doing that. So we're kind of having one side of the Maritime Fund that specifically is we're reaching out to families. The other side is for community partners, businesses, other entities in the past that have said, we believe in what you do. Ms. Beck is about to go through the entire thing that we typically talk to people that come to visit our school about how we teach what we teach and how that works. And so having community partners that support that is the other side of the Maritime Fund. So doing that kind of development project means that we have to bring in other people to do that because we're also still focused on doing school really well. So if you guys haven't met Ms. Young is our development coordinator and does a lot. She worked with the fishing tournament last year. She's been doing a lot of other things, maybe behind the scenes. You guys haven't always seen a true workhorse for us. We're also pivoting some of our technology roles to her, with Ms. Beck serving as assistant principal. She can't always run out and fix an iPad, so we need people to do that, right? So Ms. Young is also talented with technology. So we're shifting some roles and some responsibilities, but all of that is done in a way that hopefully still supports all the goals that we're trying to accomplish. So Maritime Fund launches for sure. If you guys need more information about that, the website is live now. Now, thanks.
And an email will go out this afternoon.
And an email's out this
Links
afternoon.
and more details.
All right, so without further ado, everyone, our assistant principal, Ms. Allie Beck.
Welcome. I know I talked a little bit about some curriculum items last year with everybody when we were talking about STEM and STEAM and project-based learning, and I'm going to talk about them again today because it very much is part of our curriculum. It's how we teach what students are learning. But I always like to start here when someone says and asks, what is our curriculum here? We start with the Georgia Standards of Excellence. They're the standards that every public school in Georgia follows. I always refer to them as the floor. It's the minimum of what you want students to do. And the great thing about when you're implementing project-based learning in STEAM is students tend to go a lot deeper with the content and with the standards. But we're a school, so we still have to lean into some really specific curricular goals, and we do have a detailed early childhood literacy plan. So foundational skills, phonological awareness, phonics are all things that we have to teach, and sometimes those don't always fit well when we're talking about STEM and STEAM, and we have to take a systematic approach to that. So we do have a couple of curriculums that we subscribe to here, and that's Wilson Foundations, that's K through 2. So if you have a student K through 2, you're probably familiar with the passages that you get each week, things like that. But that follows the science of reading and all of the most current research about how students learn how to read. The other thing that we're really excited about related to curriculum, and this is actually K through middle school that we're implementing, is a program called the Writing Revolution. It's the Hockman method of writing, if you're interested in looking this up. We have quite a few teachers that have just begun training in this fall. So we're starting to implement it slowly. It's not a curriculum. It's not like there's a writing book or a workbook or anything that goes with it. It's all about writing across the curriculum, really embedding writing skills into even things like math. So it's a really cool program that we're excited about using. on starting with foundational skills. How does a student write a sentence before you can move to writing a paragraph and then an essay? So it is really a great program that we're excited to implement. And then of course we're a maritime school. That's part of our charter. To be a charter, you have to have an innovative program. Ours is maritime. And we implement maritime within project-based learning and our STEAM program. And that's what I'm really going to dig into today. If you have any questions, please stop me. So I think we talk about this a lot. We advertise it a lot. We are a Godot STEAM certified school. That is a fairly rigorous process that we went through. It was a 3-year process, and we are the only K-8 middle school in this region that's STEAM certified. Because of that, we have a lot of other schools come visit us. I think we've done site visits and school visits. We've done about 4 or 5 this year already, and we have many coming up. We've had leaders from around SAC PSS coming to kind of see what we're doing, and we really are serving as an innovative model for the rest of the district, and that's been really exciting for us. The kids are really used to having folks come in and see what they're working on, and teachers are used to coming in and talking to other teachers about what we're doing. And then we're an Apple Distinguished School, one of 700 schools globally recognized for innovative use of technology. So people hear STEAM all the time. I'm stealing this from Allie Ward. If you don't know who Allie Ward is, she has a great podcast, Ologies and Smologies for younger kids. It's a really cool science podcast. But I got to see her at ISTE. It's a tech conference this summer, and she describes STEAM like this. And this is and after doing STEAM for the past 10 years, I've never heard anyone describe it so well. And I really think when I talk about the standards are like your hammer, okay? That's the most basic part. That's what you want students to learn. But you can't hand students a hammer and have them really understand it, right? We can do it really superficially. We can probably assess that and have them score pretty well on standardized tests, but what does that mean to students? Here's what STEAM does. STEAM helps kids, that hammer helps kids make sense of what they're learning. So all of a sudden, this hammer has a purpose. They can use it to crack a coconut. The standards can be used to solve a problem. It can be used to build a house. It can be used to build a frame. All of those things are how students apply the standards. And that really, to me, is a really great description of STEAM. It's hard sometimes for people to grasp their minds about it not just being an acronym. It's not something we do afterwards. It is how we teach here. And that's why when we're talking about curriculum, we have to be able to talk about what STEAM is. It's how we teach and how we instruct. Another graphic, I did not cite this, it's from PBL Works. This is one of the ways that I like to talk about STEAM when we have new teachers come in. Because a lot of times people think, okay, we're gonna teach all these standards in a very traditional way, and then at the end of the unit, students are gonna work on a project. That's the dessert. We're not doing a project. It's the main course. It's how students are exploring the content, how students are learning. So this is another really good graphic, I think, that explains how we approach our curriculum. The other piece of this is design thinking. And design thinking is embedded in everything that students do here. It is part of the STEAM process. And I know you've seen this around before. And this is actually how your students learn. When teachers, we say teachers are designers at TIVA. When teachers plan curriculum, when they plan projects, they start with the standards and they say, okay, what standards can I connect, or how can I connect these standards with some sort of problem? They go through this process, and then when they're planning lessons for your children, they're actually planning what students are doing in each step of this design process. We do this because we know that design thinking fosters creativity, problem solving, and collaboration with students. It prioritizes empathy and user-centered approaches, meaning we're having students design and solve problems for someone other than themselves, which is a really hard thing sometimes for younger kids to do, to think outside of themselves. So that is something that we emphasize in this, that everything we do, we have to think of our user. And then it encourages students to question, experiment, and iterate, and continue to try and improve through a process. This is something I'm especially proud of when we embarked on our STEAM journey. It was the very first thing that we did as a staff. We actually used design thinking to design this as a staff, and it's now something that everyone who goes through STEM and STEAM certification for the state studies our model. This is a model that the rest of the state uses. So what does this look like in action? And this is actually really simplified because there are a lot of other celebration. We did a big shorebird festival, but you can see the driving pressure or driving problem was up here to engage the community in bird stewardship. It's definitely helped. If our students ever catch someone chasing shorebirds, they will fuss at them on the beach for it. But you can see that each of the content areas found standards that they were able to connect to this problem statement. Even down to algebra, which I remember it being a little tricky. We couldn't really figure out, without data, it's always an easy connection. But she even had students design leashes where they had to calculate the tension of the leashes because keeping your dog on a leash on the beach is really important to protect shorebirds. So we get really creative in trying to find authentic connections with standards. And then our community partnerships are always something that we focus on. We tend to start with a problem and then reach out to community partners pretty early because we're not the experts in everything maritime, sometimes we're not the experts in shorebirds. So Manomet is, and they were one of our big community partners for this and came in, they were really proud of, they had some booths set up at the bird festival, but they came in and talked to the students, they gave them feedback on their work. And part of that is really making sure we're getting our community partners that are at an advocacy level where we're supporting the community partner as much as they're supporting us. Here's another example of what this looks like. And you can see it's not simple. I mean, there's lots of pieces that teachers are putting together. That's why we say teachers are designers, but we have all our focus skills here. Those are our core standards. This is Inky Brittany. And then from those core standards, we're trying to make these connections to not only maritime, but STEAM, so that includes arts integration. Second grade does a beautiful job integrating some art themes. But you can see there's just a lot to it. There's a lot of pieces that go together that our teachers work on. And if you don't know, Inky Brittany is one of our community partners. She does professional development with our staff. She goes in and actually teaches lessons to students with teachers. She co-plans with them. She's been really valuable, and she's created some graphics for us that help us kind of visualize what students do here. Generally, for projects, we do 4 projects a year that when they get to middle school, they tend to be semester-long projects. They're a little more robust. But this is just an example of what second grade's projects might look like. So 1 a quarter. They're not always engaged in project-based learning. I like to refer to it as or explain it like a dimmer switch. So some of the characteristics of project-based learning are always going to be in what students are learning here, but it's not always going to be a full-blown project. It could be that one day a lesson could just integrate art and math, and you can see that dimmer switch for STEM and STEAM is just going up a little bit more and a little bit more. Now, when we get into the full-blown projects, and then we're all the way on, it's all a big project. And I can't talk about curriculum without talking about applications. One of the things that makes us very unique here is that our students actually go to applications for almost 2 hours a day. That gives our core teachers plenty of time to plan and do all the designing. That's very important. But the other thing that this does is that we really lean into our application teachers and trust them to teach the content. We don't just send them there to art class or to maritime engineering for a babysitter. Our apps teachers collaborate with our core teachers to make sure that students are applying what they're learning in class to their applications. And one of the things that we do with them also that's a little unique, you won't find at many other schools, is that they get to actually stay in elementary school in their applications for 3-week periods. So that gives the apps teachers a chance to dig into some meaningful projects. It also gives them a chance to develop meaningful relationships with students. In so many other schools, a student might go to an art class once a week, and it's hard for that teacher even to remember that student's name. So I think that goes a long way in fostering some really strong relationships with their apps teachers, which I'm sure you know because they tend to be the kids' favorite teachers when they talk about their time here. So these are our elementary apps that students take. They're paired together, and they go to the, again, 3-week period or 3-week intervals, so they see them 4 times a year. And then it gets a little more robust in middle school. And so when your child is in 5th grade, they get a course catalog, and they actually get to do a course selection of all the courses they want to take. And that's not only for applications. We also have something in middle school called Tech Time. That's TEMA Enhanced Connection Hour, and that's where we have an opportunity to do some remediation. We have remediation classes, but we also have like modern narrative, where students are doing podcasting. We have nature journaling. We have science fair, parlay, student government, so lots of options there. Oh, computer science, like robotics. But that's in the middle of the day. So applications are actually another option that students get to choose. Some of these are year-long courses and some of these are high school level. So Chinese is a year-long course, it's high school level, and that will help your child fulfill any requirements that they need to have for high school foreign language. Modern Band also is a year-long class. Research is one that we require all of our 6th graders to take. We require our 6th graders to take research because this might be not something you might not know, but in lieu of taking physical science in 8th grade, all of our students take high school oceanography. Instead of taking life science, the middle school life science, all of our students take environmental science. So what we did as a science team is we took all of those science standards from life science and from physical science, and we jigsawed them. And a lot of those fit naturally into environmental. A lot of them fit naturally into oceanography. Some of them quite didn't. So what we're doing is Ms. Jednak in that research class fills in some of those gaps for the science standards that we might be missing in that area, because students are still required in 8th grade to take that physical science assessment for GMAS. So that is something that the data we look at.
I got a question.
Yes.
I see y'all have Chinese. What about Spanish?
We talked about that. It's a conversation we have often about what foreign language we think would be best. It's been interesting. We actually had a meeting with the head of the foreign language department for SECPSS, and this is a direction that a lot of schools are going. And it's not just they're talking about offering things like Korean as well, especially with the new plant coming in.
That was my next question. Was let's say this, I don't run into Chinese too often in my business or even anywhere around here. Spanish, I see it every day. I look at I think, yeah, Chinese is maybe the wave of the future. When I was growing up, it was Spanish. Maybe I don't see the Chinese influence like I see the Spanish influence that we have. And
There's definitely some connections in trade we've tried to make with that and really thought about. But again, like when we met with the foreign language director, one of the things we talked about is even just developing and thinking now about the influx of folks coming in with the new plant, developing an appreciation for Asian culture. I mean, that is something that is really important, that we're going to be able to understand people that are around and, develop empathy for a community that's going to be pretty new here. Did you want to talk a little bit about that? I know we talked about foreign language quite a bit.
You hit all the same points. When you look at world language, there's a lot of Spanish offerings, and there's obviously a lot of Spanish-speaking families, and I've had Latinx families ask me in the past, like, what's going on? This is when I offered Latin, which a lot of people, dead language. We try to look at the languages that help students with the way that they think differently and problem solve differently. And when we met with the world language director, one of the things that he talked about was Mandarin, Korean, Farsi, like some of the languages that are much more globally looked at, really do help students process and think differently about language acquisition, and really does help them with their acceptance of like things that are significantly culturally different. There are Spanish-speaking families that are, bordering here in America. It's not so far out of the scope of what our kids might experience to, connect with those families. It is very different for them to connect with Chinese families, Korean families, Japanese families. So I think we looked at options that we thought made sense for us for maritime trade, and for ones that we thought would help our kids really dive deeper into acquiring a language that would go more with problem solving than Spanish.
Yeah, I get it. If you're if this is a maritime school and you're gonna sit here and you're gonna learn about stuff globally, Chinese is the way to go. I just think about locally. Spanish is all around you, and not being able to communicate with the person next to you, that may be a problem.
The exciting part about it locally is that it's a growing discipline. Many of the schools in Savannah, Chatham County are developing Chinese programs now. So that's really cool. So if our kids do go to whatever schools they go to, there's going to be opportunities, hopefully for them too, if they wanted to continue and further this, they could. This has been really interesting because we have our Chinese teacher we received through a grant initially, and she was here all the time, and she was actually pushing started out small. I think we had maybe 10 or 12 students the first year opt to take Chinese. This year we had like 30 kids sign up. They love it and they're very successful. And Ms. Farmer is a fabulous teacher. She does a really good job, and the kids really do learn a lot. So it's been so far a really good experience, and I think we've all been really happy with it. But I hear you. I mean, Spanish is.
I mean, when I was growing up, it was required that you had to take a foreign language.
It is. It's a 2-year to 2-year minimum in the state for high school credit. You have to have. Computer science counts as that too, though.
Yeah, so when we talk about world languages, we also have to consider computer science now falls under a world language, and we're really leaning heavily into that. We're a small school, you know, we can't be everything for everybody. It's a good point, and we're mindful of the fact that we're in a community that has a lot of different types of language speakers. For us, I think we're just thinking about, I know we're thinking about what are the opportunities that this might provide for kids beyond just here. I don't want to saddle kids with being in Savannah forever. If they are, I want them to have access to the best opportunities for them if they're gonna stay in this community. So once again, I think if we're thinking about maritime trade and thinking about what are the things that might provide opportunity for them beyond their normal scope, that's how we created it. I'm open to thinking about other things. I don't have to keep doing it just because we're doing it. Also, I'm a big fan of Google Translate now.
And you can't sit here and say, okay, hey, you've made the choice. Chinese is going to be better for the maritime, and that's what we feel like. That's the curriculum we're pushing, and Spanish is not something that is important, right? This to long term to what our ultimate mission is, and I get that. That's fine. I get that. I'm not here to have a debate or anything.
No, it's a good question.
Yeah.
No, thanks.
We have this conversation often about what the best foreign language would be to offer, and I don't know if there's not one answer that's right for sure.
So you were saying, I mean, I know we're a small school, so, I mean, what are we limited by? Like, why could we not have a second foreign language? Is it because of our size, because of cost, because of, you know, what? I'm just
I mean,
curious.
it could be all of those things.
Yes.
Okay.
So, we had the opportunity also when we offered Chinese, and there was the Hanban Institute and the Confucius Institute at Savannah State. We were able to, this is all public record in the budget, we were able to get a teacher for $5,000. And Savannah State foot the rest. Great. That was the first 2 years. Then Savannah State closed. And you guys remember we had a pandemic?
Hanban closed.
Hanban closed. Yeah, not Savannah State. The office at Savannah State closed. Thanks for that. Appreciate it. The Hanban Institute, and they closed. A lot of sentiment about China during the pandemic. You guys remember this? Was it just me? Closed. So then, our world language director for the system found a connection for us at Wesleyan. So we were able to keep that teacher for about the same amount. It was like $11,000. By the way, $11,000 for a teacher on a menu, bargain. Okay. Hanban closed at Wesleyan last year, so that means this year we're hiring this teacher full salary from our budget. We're, you know, I want to build a building.
Right.
I
was just curious. Yeah.
want to keep doing other, offer like extensions of robotics programs and things like that. Plus, again, the reason we get into these discussions is because we start thinking about, well, what are the world languages that we offer? We offer Mandarin because we've been able to do that on the cheap, right? We also added someone who's certified in computer science, which is hard to find someone certified in computer science to teach it as a language recognized by the state that we could offer high school credit for. Got that. Okay. Now I start looking at diminishing returns. I've only got roughly 150 middle grades kids.
Right.
So how am I going to, if I add another world language, then each of those teachers that I'm paying full price for has 10 kids. It's not a very cost-effective way to do that.
Right.
Which you guys also rely on me to run a balanced budget and to make make cost-effective decisions, right? So it isn't that I'd offer every world language. I think they're great opportunities for kids to know more about the world out there. Nobody's talked about French. It's typically number 2, Spanish and French, like that's what you normally get. But I'm also open, like we ask families, like what are the things that you think we need to consider? And language comes up almost every year.
And we're looking at grants for it
Yeah.
in the future for sure.
That too,
Something-
yeah.
It's something that we're continuing to look at. There are a lot of great foreign language grants.
I was just gonna add that we had lots of kids in Chinese and we had a great experience. Like I had James did 1 and 2 and got the high school credits for it, did really well. And even when we had it with the little ones, my kids still remember all the songs. They
Oh,
really
yeah.
love it. So anyway, we had a good experience. It was a good culture and you can take Spanish in high school.
Is there still the bleed over
Yeah,
into
yeah.
younger grades?
No,
No.
no.
That
Yeah,
would be-
I know.
We would love that. Yes. That is something we're looking for. The other logistical part of like adding another foreign language is welcome to Miss Farmer's office.
Right there. Yeah.
It is that desk right
She lets us
there.
crash for meetings. Right?
And when she's teaching her classes, she's actually in other teacher spaces, which is what a lot of our teachers have to do because we don't have the space here to keep adding more teachers and more classes and more options.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about applications and we're here and we've got research and, you know, these places. Kalina Jednik is a nationally recognized data science teacher. She travels literally around the United States talking to people about, she was on a cart here for 3 years. I had to buy a house to give her a classroom. That's what we're dealing with. I mean, it's crazy sometimes, and again, I'm back to like, we're scrappy and we figure it out. But this is nuts, right? So if we had more classroom spaces, we knew definitively like this is what our margins are for us to be able to have a building and be able to, and if that left room for world language and everybody said, you know what, we don't need this, that, and the other. We don't need an extra kindergarten class, or we don't want more middle school kids. We want another world language. Okay, let's go to the board. Let's talk about it.
Peter, I guess this is a bigger question. When I sit here and I watch it Groves build this just monstrosity on Highway 21, and I'm sitting here, I'm like, God, I mean, I think y'all do a fantastic job.
Thank you.
You know, and I sit here and Kinley tells me this, you know more about it, but I mean, the amount of people that are wanting to come to your school. I mean, they just put kids in Groves because that's where the hell they're going. And
It's a
they
neighborhood
get
school.
all this money where obviously we're not really rewarding teachers and parents, I mean, who are sitting here dedicated to this. I mean, you get all these tax dollars going to basically, I'm not gonna say it's failing. I don't know the whole, what's this? I think more people would rather come here than there. There's a desire. Why are y'all not clamoring for those tax dollars? Are y'all getting them? What is their budget per student and what is ours?
So we,
I mean, I look at it from, I mean, that's a big deal. I mean, when you sit here and say, hey, you've got, you know, I pay taxes and,
Yes.
and so does everybody else in this room, you know, and I get it. They've probably been waiting for that school for a long time. But I mean, what are we getting from, I mean, are we getting the same number of dollars from the school system as they are?
so there was a great presentation that Laura did at the last board meeting that kind of talks about the funding mechanisms and the per pupil amount that we get, or that we're allocated. That's the best way to say this. It's the same. We're a public school in Georgia. We get that.
Okay.
It goes through the district and they take 3% off the top. Okay, whatever. That's for them approving our charter and that partnership, right? And that's how we negotiate things like food service and all the other stuff. But then we pay for our transportation costs, right? Other schools don't have to do that. We pay for other overhead expenses that are just operationalized expenses that other schools don't pay. So we get almost the same amount of money per kid, But the way that we have to spend our money is different now. I don't have to buy buses. You guys know that. Like, we don't have to do that. I think our population would be significantly different and maybe even fine. And I wouldn't have a wait list at every grade level.
We appreciate the buses as a bus family.
Thanks, yeah. My kids are like, can I rent the bus? I'm like, no, what do you get the car.
Where are they getting the or how do they get on the list of having, I mean, every school in Chatham County is damn near brand new.
Mhm.
I mean, I don't know which ones aren't, but I mean, it's like they build a $200 million facility, it seems like, every year.
So that's East Bluff. So that's
Yeah, I
any
mean-
option sales tax that everybody votes on.
That's
You
what I'm
guys
talking
take
about. They're
that
getting
penny.
East Bluff.
But here's the
But
thing with
do
East
we get-
Bluff. So the district gets to set the priority of how they want to spend that money.
Yeah.
Okay? Because it's a local option sales tax approved by voters, right? And so that money goes to the district and they get to prioritize. And here's the thing that I've shared with people.
Sounds like
And,
you need to
like,
be
I'm,
politicking.
so here's what I've shared with people as someone who used to work downtown. The district can definitely publish, this is our list of priorities for East Bluff for this coming cycle, which lasts like, I think, 4 years. I think they vote on every 4 years. They can even list Tabby Island Maritime Academy new facility on that sheet. Wow, we finally did it. Except after you vote, every year the district can reprioritize that list. Tama could be at the top if it even made the list, which so far hasn't. The district's only built one charter school in 25 years.
I mean, that was one of Roger's big deals. You know, I mean, have you talked to him about it?
I have had the opportunity to talk to Mr. Moss a few times. He actually came out for our anniversary event. He's a big supporter of charter schools. I think he's also working with the new superintendent and trying to hear more about what her vision for working with charter schools is. It's my understanding she's charter friendly. That's a thing. But I haven't had a chance to meet with her yet. He's also been here and been wholly impressed with parents, by the way. He was like, your parent support is incredible. I'm like, yay, I know. But he was shocked. He was like, you've got how many trailers? And I was like, well, I've got the best trailer park on Tybee. It's fantastic. But it's a concern. And he agrees with me. What does that mean as far as action? I don't know. But again, this is why I'm talking to the board more about kind of moving out of this transitional time of a lot of conversation without a lot of action. If we're going to stay on Tybee, sure everybody heard me. If we're going to stay on Tybee, we need either land or partnership, period. And those are conversations I'm having with the city. Those are conversations I'm having with the diocese. This is moving purposefully, hopefully quicker than it has in the last 10 years. And I want to put something in front of our board that they can make a decision on within the next 6 months. I don't know if that answers your question or not. I do know I've hijacked your
that
presentation,
does. I mean,
and I'm so sorry.
I mean, when I look at, I know this is completely gotten into a lot deeper conversation, but I mean, I just feel like, you know, I sit here and I'll be honest with you, I went to Country Day. We had the finest of the finest of the finest. And,
I love their athletic program. It's
Yeah.
beautiful.
yeah. But I'm saying as far as buildings and everything,
Yeah.
and so, you know, it's obviously, I love the education that my children are receiving here.
Thanks.
And so when I sit here and I say, but when I look at, like I'm like, we're trying to make things work here. I mean, as you said, but we're 10 years in. It's time to move up, and so I'm like, all right, well, it's time to sit here and quit living out of trailers and
What are the options for?
yeah, where do you want to go? I mean,
I'm gonna turn that off.
Thanks, Laura.
I know this was all about.
We'll record
curriculum.
parent
I know
plug-ins.
it's
It's
all
no big
about-
deal.
No, I mean,
You have to come.
Um,
I'm engaged.
I
You
like
are.
it. Coffee.
I mean, I pretty much tell you publicly the same thing that I think everybody else talks about, right? Which is, we're here. I believe that the bishop and the parish see value in the school being here and want us to be here. Okay, well, that's a good place for us to start having talks. We also are working with a local group that's talking about more childcare opportunities on the island, which is something that I've been talking about for a couple of years now. There is no daycare facility on the island. You guys not know that? There's not, right? And so when I think about opportunities for teachers that are also having kids, you know, I have teachers that have to nurse in their car. I don't require that. That's the space that they can have. That's horrifying to me. We need to have some way that we're allowing and normalizing childcare, especially for an industry that says we care about kids.
I mean, that's a, in my opinion, I mean, that's a revenue source. I mean,
Well, and there's a revenue stream there for sure, right? And I ran a daycare before, and you can buy all kinds of things with daycare money that is like free and loose, right? You can do improvements, you can hire more people, like you can definitely do those things. Having a new building will help us with revenue streams too, and I can talk about that all day. But so here is one option: partnering with the city. The old school really is kind of on its last leg too. I mean, I know this building was built before that, but not much more, right? So where the old school is and where the city uses for offices and things like that could be another potential location. We missed an opportunity. There was 1.2 acres for sale across from the campground. Maybe because of some setbacks and things like that, it might not have been the best location for us. But if anybody knows anybody with a couple of acres on Tybee they're not using, that's buildable, let me know. I got $4 million in the bank. I'm more than happy to have some conversations about acquiring land to build a school. Those are my three options on the island. The only other option I know is to leave.
I mean, I think
And
it,
it defeats the purpose. Not defeats the purpose, but it's not the same.
It wouldn't be the Tybee Island Maritime Academy
No.
anymore, right?
it'd be the Wilmington Island Maritime
Well,
Academy.
and
Or the Tulahi Island. I don't want to
Tulahi,
change it.
yeah.
I mean, I got so much branding with a T. I'll find it like a T. Thunderbolt Island. It's not an island or whatever. No, I mean, but yeah, it kind of defeats the purpose. And let me remind everybody, like the reason that this charter school I think has so much support is because people start charter schools in a lot of places because they are frustrated with the local school system, right? Like, we can do it better, we can do it different. That's not why TEMA was created. Tybee didn't have a school. There was no school on this island. There were no people with families settling here because what are they gonna do? Send their kid 12 miles away across 2 bridges? That's not fair. It does something when a community doesn't have a school. So it's important for a school to be on the island, but I gotta make sure that everybody else sees that we give more than we ask.
Yeah, well, you're at a crossroads. Okay, are we gonna continue to, I mean, obviously, we're crossing those 2 bridges, whereas I think the majority, what are the percentage of students that are crossing the 2 bridges?
Like coming from,
Yeah, I
probably
mean-
60,
Yeah, 60, okay. I mean, but,
60%.
and you obviously have more people that are wanting to come. It might be one of those things where you have to sit here and say, hey, I mean, I look at it like this, you might have outgrown Tybee Island.
I disagree.
Yeah,
Well,
think we
I-
have.
Well, we're also part, so this is interesting, we might have, I'd like to say on Tybee, but, we're also considering replication. So not necessarily saying we're outgrowing Tybee and leaving it, but how could we replicate what we're doing in another area and offer this to other people that way as well?
And-
So there's 2 ways to look at that.
While Maritime is our innovative charter feature, one of the reasons we have a charter is because there was no school on the island. If you go to another location in Chatham County that has successful
neighborhood school,
schools, a
right.
neighborhood school, there's no demand.
Yeah.
The LEA
explicit
might not
demand.
even approve it.
Right.
If we,
Right, and we are up
I
for
mean,
charter
you know,
renewal.
there's a lot of things I don't know.
No, but listen.
I'll be,
That sort of pragmatic view is valued for sure because, I mean, it helps us, it always helps us think about what this argument is about why we want to be here, but also what are the paths and what are the avenues for some of the decisions that we have to make. It's valuable.
I have a question really quick. Is there a way, I'm just gonna piggyback. So sorry.
Yeah,
But in speaking of the Chatham County Board, is there a way that parents can show up to have your back at the SCCPSS board to push initiatives better?
I'm not sure. So let me make sure that I'm understanding your question right. So parents are always allowed to show up. We present a couple of times a year. We are, did you sit down? I'm so sorry. Wow. We present a couple of times a year. So I don't know that, I'm not in a position right now where I think I have to rally the troops, if that makes sense.
Sure.
I have a very supportive board, first of all, governing board. As someone who worked in the district for almost 15 years, I feel like I have good relationships with a lot of the board members as well that exist on the Savannah Chatham board. Very thoughtful people trying to do good things and, you know, for their constituents where they're at, truly. Whether this is recording or not, I would say the same thing. Our charter renewal didn't go the way I wanted it to, but it didn't go the way that any charter school wanted it to. Like, we were just in that cycle where there was no data. The most recent data point was from 2018, the year before I got here, and it wasn't great, right? So none of the charter schools got renewed. It wasn't just us. Could I have pitched a fit? I did. I did a lot of like borderline inappropriate communication electronically about my frustration with data and charts and all this stuff. But the outcome was still the same for every charter school. If we get to a point again, then absolutely. I mean, we'll have a completely different, like, well, not only will we rally the troops, I'll prep you with questions, like, we'll do all that stuff. But we're not really there.
I just didn't know if it was a matter of, like, parents showing. And this is the most parent-supportive school I've ever seen, but, you know, I didn't know if it was if there was a way we could show up better.
Ask again around charter renewal.
Ask again around charter renewal, which is like next spring. The challenges the district has are the same challenges that we have right now. Teacher recruitment and retention, talent acquisition is hard for everybody, right? We get into some really balanced conversations sometimes where we advertise a position, someone from the district invariably applies. We're not, I don't talk people into working with me. So I don't reach out and I don't recruit, it's not appropriate. But if somebody applies and they're in the district, I'm not gonna say, well, you work for Savannah Chatham, I'm not gonna interview you. That's crazy. But it does mean that we're gonna have a conversation if the person meets our expectations during the interview and we make an offer and they accept. Now they're leaving the same, technically, school system serving the same kids. It's a delicate relationship, especially like there's one elementary school right now in the district, I think of their 5 teachers on their 3rd grade, they have 0 teachers. It's all subs. But it is a dire circumstance at schools right now. The fact that we have 100% retention boggles the mind. People are like, how do you do it? I'm like, I make them drive 2 hours every day. They're like, what? Right? But yes, I mean, I'm happy for parent support. I'm grateful for parent support. There's definitely times I think we might have to lean into that more. Right now, one of the things we were talking about a charter school, the reason I think we have value is not just that we provide a great education for kids. We're supposed to be lab schools. We're supposed to be the schools that are looking at best practices, doing things that are completely different than the rest of the school system, because then the school system gets to say things to us like, tell me about how your calendar is working, right? And we can say, well, it looks like this. Tell me more about what you're doing with STEAM. Well, this is what we do. This is how we hire. This is how we train. This is how we teach. This is how we build curriculum, right? We're supposed to be leaning into that. We're a public school. At the end of the day, I want great opportunities for kids. I don't care where they're at. I love our kids, but I want great things for kids. It helps all of us, right? when we think about outcomes, when we talk about those things, yeah, we look at standardized tests, but we also talk about like workforce development skills. Are the skills that our kindergarten, first grade, and second grade students learning related to collaborating and problem solving going to help them keep a job that their parents want them to have or they want to have later? That's the kind of stuff we talk about. That's, I think, why when people visit us, they get really excited.
That's a great segue into talking about
Oh, you're welcome.
measuring growth.
I'm meant to do that.
I got other things
I'm
going
gonna
on.
wrap this up. I know that's way juicier than curriculum, but it's a good point. We are a lab school. We have schools come from all over. One of the schools that we've had a really strong partnership with has a brand new, beautiful building with more space than they know what to do with, all of the science equipment, and they come here all the time and they're like, oh my gosh, your students are so engaged. And none of this measures engagement, but that is the one thing that I think is just different about our school, is that when you walk into a classroom, you can see that students are engaged and excited about what they're learning. But we do also use all of the same similar assessments and assessments as our public school does. So every student here takes GMAS, 3rd through 8th grade. We use math assessment. That's different from the district. They've switched, but we decided to keep that so we can have some data over time. And then teachers create their own assessments, and then of course through rubrics and projects. And here's the other thing that's really interesting about us, and you won't see this kind of demographic in most schools, is that we have a really interesting bell curve of our population. About 25% of our students are gifted, about 20% of our students receive special education services, and then we have a lot of support services in between. You would be hard pressed to walk into any classroom here at TIMA and not see 2 teachers working alongside the students, and that's because many of our students qualify for remediation services through EIP, and in middle school it's REP. And it's just the ways that we support students. That population is actually smaller this year, which is good, right? We want students to move outside of those remediation areas and become kind of tier 1 is what we say the general student population would fall under. So we don't do a traditional gifted pullout, if that's something you've ever seen. All of our teachers are gifted certified. When they're hired here, if they're not gifted certified, it's one of the requirements. And we do a consultative model for anyone who isn't gifted certified, but all of the teachers here are prepared and trained to be able to support the gifted population within their classroom. And so just a couple things that have new programs or programs that have been around. Our school does clubs that's attached to LYP, so students that don't receive signals, it's a way to reward students that are always doing the right thing. So if they don't have, they can have a yellow signal, that's just a warning, but orange, they have an orange, they don't participate. It's the clubs involved, they're fishing, help me out, Noelle, there's games, there's
Tybee Tourist.
gardening.
Junior lifeguard.
Junior lifeguard, all these really fun opportunities that students participate in 5th grade and up for once a month, and it's for a couple hours, so that's pretty great. Our counselor does class visits at least monthly that are connected to our LYP traits. Our middle school has started something called an Upstanders Club, and that is led by Ms. Holliday and Ms. Murray, our counselor, and that is an opportunity for students to get together and talk about the things that they want to change culturally, just in our middle school even. So, and sticking up for other kids if they see something that's wrong. Not necessarily, not tattletelling, but it's, standing up for people and trying to create a culture that they know that they want to be part of. This is great, middle school KP. I don't remember what KP stands for.
Kids Patrol.
Thank you. This is something that our middle schoolers got from 4-H trip that they take, and they take turns rotating and actually cleaning up the cafeteria after lunch, and it's usually after the majority of the school has had lunch. So they have rags, and there's some accountability there. They have to clean the microwaves. They have to sweep, and we think it's been a really successful program so far, and definitely cleaner in here. It's been nice. And then another initiative is our sustainability committee. You'll hear more information about that soon, because I think we're going to be working on some fundraisers for developing a composting program. And then we are, I know, trying to start paper and aluminum recycling as well. So just some opportunities to
Cardboard and paper is already started.
Cardboard paper, okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Communication, Brightspace is something we were really excited to roll out at the beginning of the year. That did not happen. We are piloting with 5th grade. Eventually, it will be something that we use. We're excited because there is now a Passover. That's kind of been the holdup between Power School and Brightspace. So rather than checking Google Classroom and then checking Power School, it's all going to be integrated in one place, and that's just taking a little bit longer from the engineers at Brightspace. And then, of course, we have our weekly newsletters and Remind. Oh, and then if you go to visit Learning at TEMA, there are a couple really robust navigation guides, one for K through 2 and one through middle grades. This is actually a student and parent facing one, so if you have a student in middle school, this is what you looked at the course catalog to look at all the options. That is also linked on our website. So just if you want to get into curriculum even more, there's lots and lots of details broken down by grade level there for you. And then also our STEAM site, which was our portfolio for STEAM certification, is not updated, but you'll get a really good idea of what it looks like when students are engaged in the project process. And now it's over.
Thank you, Ms. Beck.
You're welcome.
Any other questions about curriculum? Any of that? Did you guys know that it was like all that involved?
No.
No.
Seems like a lot of red tape.
If you have a gifted, if you have a student that is, that took the test and got gifted status or whatever, what does that mean? Do they go to different classrooms, or what do you do in gifted?
You want to talk about this?
So like Ms. Beck said, our teachers are are endorsed, so they go through a year-long course. It's actually made up of 3 classes that give them a gifted endorsement, and that's a requirement for all our teachers. And then within the classroom, we use what's called a cluster grouping model, and they are grouped in their classroom with other gifted students where they work together, and that looks different depending on what they're doing. So you're actually about to receive like a differentiation contract that will show you how every teacher is receiving or going to differentiate or has been differentiating so far this year in their classroom. And so they can differentiate through the process that they're teaching. They might deliver some content a little differently. They might work in small groups with, depending on the advanced level of what they're doing. The product, they might have a different product that they have to create that goes a little more in depth or a little more advanced. They may have, the content may be a little different. They may have some more content or an independent study.
So-
Content, process,
Do they
product,
recognize?
I'm going through. So there's many ways that
Do
the
they
teachers are
recognize that it's a
differentiating
gifted
within the
thing that they're
classroom.
doing?
Sometimes not.
No, so like they just.
Yeah,
think
so
that's-
for example,
And sometimes, right.
if someone if they're gifted, if they're identified for gifted in verbal reasoning, right? Or maybe something related to expression and creativity, then in their group, as part of their plan, because when someone is gifted and talented, the idea is to continue to push them as far as they can go in that skill, right? So the plan with the teacher might be that in that group, the student that's identified as that might have an extension of creating maybe a film or writing a script, which might go a little bit more in depth than what another group might be doing, right? Because that's where the kid is talented. It could also be if someone, like for quantitative reasoning or mathematics, that they continue to get more and more acceleration in math because we do offer high school algebra in 8th grade for credit, and ensuring that we're giving, not that you have to be gifted to take that credit, but if we know you're gifted and talented there, then we should be doing everything we can to encourage your proficiency in math so that you're prepared and ready to do that if that's something that your parents and you decide that you want to do. You were going to say something?
No, I don't know. Project and problem-based learning though really lend itself to this model for gifted, because there's a lot of natural and it's not super obvious, which we
Right.
don't want it to be.
Right.
And we also have students that are double gifted. I mean, so you have students that might be identified with a disability and also be gifted, and there is a percentage of our students like that. So, I mean, there's all sorts of services that students are receiving all the time that they don't always know that that's what's happening.
Yeah, I think that is good.
The other thing too, I mean, if you guys have ever been to another elementary school, especially, or any other school, but really typically in elementary, there's typically a gifted teacher or a couple of gifted teachers, and they basically come and they pull the kids and they work with them for, you know, a half hour or so, then they go back. I don't do that. It gets into a lot of really weird things because teachers are territorial by nature. I don't know if you know that, they're amazing, but they have quirks. One of them is like they want their kids when they have their kids and they just want that. So to pull kids out sometimes gets frustrating. Also, to see someone who has 6 kids they're teaching half an hour at a time when you've got the other 24, everybody has feelings, people get in feelings. The way that we do it by saying everybody here, there's an expectation that if you can be endorsed for gifted you are, allows us to have computer science and engineering, film and broadcasting, data science and research, which also, by the way, reinforces some of those gifted and talented qualities for kids when they're in those application classes, right? And PBL, absolutely, when you have kids working on big projects or problems that they're solving, also helps them express themselves in the ways that they're gifted and talented, and because the teachers are endorsed, they know what the kids need.
And so children are identified as gifted or EIP by their MAP test scores, is that correct, or is it?
Oh gosh.
Um,
Well,
Well, EIP and RAP is identified, that we use map data.
And there's some other, they actually have to meet 2 criteria, so
But
there's a ERP rubric, there's a lot of different options.
and that criteria is set by the state,
Yeah.
and the legislators, the people you want in charge of education, decided what that criteria would be, and that's how it's funded.
This is EIP.
EIP and
Okay, so
REP, which is
gifted.
remediation for middle grades.
Gifted identification generally starts with just MAP scores, because that is a qualifying, there's 4 areas of giftedness. It's achievement, mental ability, creativity, and motivation. And so for a child to be identified as gifted, they have to meet 3 of those. Well, one of those indicators is the MAP test that qualifies as a achievement score. So, we kind of start there a lot of times. I also look at teachers for recommendations.
Yeah,
Because
sure.
sometimes they just know their kids, you know?
Yeah.
They're like, oh, that score was a fluke on that. But then there's further testing and they have to meet.
Yeah.
So if they have the achievement score, they would have to get 2 scores that qualify in the area of creativity, mental ability, or,
Motivation.
motivation. So,
We,
and
we
there's
often
different
talk a lot
tests,
too about
motivation
Yeah.
scales, there's different things that qualify.
gifted kids are not necessarily teacher pleasers, right? Those kids who come in and just say, you know the kids, not me, but you know the kids, like they come in, they sit down, they do their work, they're like super great, they're always trying to do their best. It's not necessarily a gifted kid, right? It's not the kid who like struggles with paying attention sometimes, who maybe gets on your nerves a little bit. We're like, tell us about those kids, because maybe we can look for those qualities because that's probably a gifted kid, right? We do a lot of legitimate movement. Kids are up and down and moving around and they're doing a lot. They're engaged, they're in the hallway, and they're doing like all kinds of stuff. That's a fantastic environment for almost every kid. But it does mean that we're not locking kids down, and so we sometimes don't see kids that might pop up somewhere else where they're like, this kid just can't sit still. Really? What are you asking him to do? Did we answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. You say a lot sometimes. So. I mean, I do. Thanks for the eyebrow raise, Ms. Beck. All right. What else?
I have a very general question. I'm just curious, not necessarily just TIMA, but just kind of across the board. How are we doing with education compared to like 20, 30 years ago? Like, are our students, is there data about that? Like, are we declining? Are we improving? Because I feel like we're declining, not necessarily at the school, but I am very curious.
You got that on video, right? All right. Sarah Adams said we're crushing it. No, here's the thing.
Like, I feel like our standards, I don't know.
Why? And I'm a parent too. Like, why parents, me too, haven't just absolutely razed schools to the ground baffles me. This system in this country, created 300 years ago, was based on the view of a Prussian army and designing instructions so that we would get assembly line workers. And we haven't changed it for 200 years. Like 10 guys got together and said, we should take 4 math in high school, and we should take 4 English in high school, and like that's gonna prepare people. And you know what? We still do the same thing. No, it's not working. It's not. I operate in the system because we're a public school, and I know what the law says. I know the policies that I have to follow to do this, but man, we do everything we can to go outside of those lines whenever possible. And, you know, still legally do what we're supposed to do.
But I will say that's why we as a family fought hard to be here and got on the wait list year after year, because traditional school, in my opinion, sucks. And here it's less traditional. And it is up and down and in the hallway and, you know, out on the beach and all over in this island. So I think this school is getting there. You know, like I think there are improvements to be made obviously everywhere, but
Sure,
I think it's
always.
a fantastic school in that.
Both of our kids here, their grades jump 2 letters in like the first year of being here. And they get up in the morning and want to go to school. I mean, what more can you ask for as a parent as your kid wants to go to school? I didn't want to go to school. I would have went to school here. I wish this was here when I was a kid.
Yeah, funding wise, if y'all open a college, we're all gonna enroll.
Right.
So I mean,
We need a high school first.
Yeah, thanks. Nobody ever asked me that, so that's great. I haven't heard
If we
that.
open a high school, that would be awesome.
Yeah,
or we
thanks.
can just all go to Faith Bacon.
Right.
There's so much research out there too. There's a guy that we follow, John Hattie. His work on student engagement and John Almaroad, like they basically literally wrote the book for the last 20 years. And John Hattie, like a couple of years ago, came out and said, I'm not doing any more research. I've done study after study for 20 years to tell you what's good for kids, and people still aren't doing it. He was like, until you start doing the things that we know work for kids, why am I doing this work? And he's right. Decisions are made based on budgets. Decisions are made based on safety and comfort. I think that we are able to attract and retain teachers because we really lean hard into letting teachers teach. That's not what happens everywhere. We care a lot about them having opportunities to collaborate with each other. I would say just as doctors practice medicine, teachers practice education. They try to be better. They try to get better at their practice. They need an environment where they feel safe to take risks. One of the first things you'll see if you were to walk in the house, we have this big sign that came out of our new teacher training, and one of our teachers said, when you are in an environment where you feel safe to take risks, you take risks. You do that for other people's kids. I don't know of anything else I could ask of them to do. So it's kind of this, people are like, you let your kids go over the island? I gotta tell you, like, people are like, you're insane. I'm like, well, yes, first of all, thanks. But if you want kids that you can trust as they become adults, then you have to trust them when they're kids. If you don't do that, then you get kids that are used to being locked down and who make decisions based on oppression. Does it always work out? No, absolutely not. Are there consequences? Yes, there are. But they're short-lived. I'd rather have kids screw up in school than out of school, right? I think parents would too. No, schools aren't great. Also, parents don't trust government schools. We talk about that all the time. Pandemic certainly didn't help that. We, as an industry, squandered an opportunity. You guys hear me say this all the time. I mean, parents were lauding the praises of teachers in the first 3 months of the pandemic. Like, pay every teacher 6 figures. Amen. By the way, still, yes, for sure. We trust them with children. But in a lot of ways, we didn't capitalize on that as an industry. We certainly didn't do what families needed and what kids needed overall. Now there's so much research coming out. We just looked at a white paper at around 4:30 this morning, or I did, and sent it to people that, or were you up? Did you read it? No, not yet? Okay. But it kind of talked about, like, what are the strategies that we know worked and didn't? And one of the biggest things is, what is the technology that really worked and what didn't? And a lot of what we tried with technology didn't work. We got kids back here as soon as we could, as fast as we could. But I also tried to make sure it was hold harmless because everybody was doing their best, right? And our best still typically tends to be better than others. But I don't know how to make you guys trust us except give you opportunities to trust us, which means coming here, spending time here, hearing more, contributing, but also expecting that we're going to give back.
I think you're doing a great job.
Thanks. I work with a lot of really talented people who I also trust and get out of their way.
Coming from a public school who failed my children, this school is bar none, like has my trust.
Thanks.
Even if it means they walk down the street, which gave me a heart attack, to the playground. But they do fine. They do.
They do fine. Most of the times. Most of the times.
They always come home at the end of the day.
That's good. And honestly, most of the kids do. So, yes.
Specific to one curriculum for middle school, we got a paper sent home yesterday for PE about the sexual education curriculum.
Yep.
Is that something that you only do if you're in PE? And I guess we're a little, when the in-depthness of it with a sixth grader and an eighth grader in the same class, like how is the curriculum taught? I guess is my question.
Carefully.
Okay. So if you're not in PE, you don't get it.
No, but
Is
there's
that-
a requirement that students take.
Yeah, there.
Oh, is there? Okay.
Yeah, so reproductive health is what they call it. Is still a requirement for kids in middle grades. They will be exposed to that at some point. The curriculum doesn't change much as far as like 6th grade versus 8th grade. We do have a female nurse and some other female professionals that help support. There's a lot of research that talks about just teach them all together. We're still kind of parochial in that we teach the boys and when we separate and teach the girls.
So if you're in PE, the 6th graders through 8th graders are all in PE together, they're separated and taught.
For just that particular unit of instruction.
The grade
Yes.
levels are not separated.
Right.
Right, so this, yeah.
No. But the gender is. That answer?
If you have any concerns, I
I don't have
encourage you to
concern.
reach out to
My son was
school.
very nervous when he read the paper, brought it home, so
Yes.
I'm just asking on behalf of
Yeah.
like.
Thanks.
how-
Yes.
We'd be happy to share that with you so you can review it and.
Yeah.
I got it, hey, yeah, I read it, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that is definitely, we toe the line for that one for sure. Topic wise, it's just one of those things that we want to make sure we're doing exactly the way the state tells us we're supposed to do it. And we also have parents who are like, nope, I'm gonna do that myself. No problem, thanks. Other thoughts or questions? Which, by the way, follow up on your question earlier, schools also do things now that schools didn't used to do, right? You talk about our schools getting better or not. Somewhere along the way, schools also became surrogate parents, not for you guys, but for others. We became daycare. It's a real thing. We have this talk when we talk about calendar every year. Like, what can we provide families that need the school to be a daycare? How can we do that? Families that both parents have to work. A week off in October, are you crazy? Right? So we try to think about that, but schools don't just teach reading and math and writing anymore. Like the one-room schoolhouse idea is way gone. And as we built that social contract over the years, I think we've also tried to be many things for families. I'm okay with that, but there's got to be quid pro quo, right? If we're going to be teaching sex ed, which we do for some, then there has to be this understanding too that we're doing our best to try to do what families want, even when it doesn't always look the way that families want it to look. And that's not necessarily improving math or improving reading. Maybe improving reproductive health. Okay with that. But I think that happened too. That allowed more flexibility for families, right? Parents were not having to do some of the things that parents used to do. Now parents are more freed up to, maybe go out and get that second job. Get a dual income family, right? It's America, the dream, right? No, I mean, what? It is, right? So schools serve many needs. It's also why I probably leaned really hard into not leaving Tybee. I think there are things that Tybee Island Maritime Academy does for this community that people don't even really necessarily think about. I do, but I think school's important. You kind of pay me to do that, right? So I'm gonna for sure always be like, no, a community needs a school. But we're definitely at a tipping point. We gotta do something. We can't just keep doing this. We're the back-to-back softball champions, and we're at a city park that they fuss at us for not always using the way that they want us to.
Isn't there prize money for the middle school?
Do we get prize money?
Sponsorship.
Huh.
Maybe,
Yeah, Nike's calling. Yeah, for sure. Nike's on the phone. It's a wrong number, but no sponsorship, no endorsement deals. Although you would think, right, that slow pitch softball is rising. It's fantastic. In fact, yes.
There's more young families who just growing up their kids on Tybee, and I guarantee you it's because the school's here. And it just creates a community. You look at Jekyll Island, and there's a lot of older population, and they want families, but no one's gonna move there. I mean, some people do, obviously, but if you know what I mean, like, you play a big part in the community, even though I might see a lot of pushback. I think it's a good thing. I'm saying it's a good thing.
Thanks for saying that. I again, when I talk with people at the city, at the municipality, folks at the Y, folks in city government, I really do try to lean into what I think our worth is. That is more than just for the families that are here. Hopefully I can also have an impact to talk about why affordable housing on the island might be a good idea, right? It's okay to have an aging population. I think we can also serve an aging population with a new building in ways that they don't always think about. Like we could literally, in a new school, I have to build a healthcare space. There's no reason why that can't also serve as a clinic for an aging population that doesn't have access to healthcare, right? I mean, we can do these things, but it takes maybe a different perspective sometimes, and folks are willing. In this community for a long time, I think people just kind of resign themselves to think either one, we don't need a school, or that's not for me, or they want something and I'm not going to give it. Okay. I think opinions are changing, but it's taken a little bit of time. Folks, I am grateful for you always spending your time every month coming out, listening to me jabber and like really useful stuff that Ms. Beck says. So if you need anything at all, please don't hesitate to reach out. We care a lot about you and your voice and what that means for us to make decisions. We really do listen. We don't always do everything you tell us to do, but we absolutely want to hear. And if it's like we're not going to do something, I promise I can always tell you why I'm not going to do it. But I care about your kids, and so does everybody else here, and I'm grateful that you guys are here, so thanks for being here.